What's going on, guys? I'm coming at you with another video, and today I want to showcase my Light of Sekka for Hire deck profile. The reason I want to showcase this deck profile is because it is catered towards more of a budget players, and the reason behind it that there's no Ash Blossoms in here, there's no very expensive hand traps. The most expensive part of this deck is probably the beat, unfortunately, which do run anywhere from $15 to $20, so that's just $60 alone right there. But I did do this deck profile. I constructed it with the idea of I wanted to keep it under $100 for anybody who's a fan of Fur Hire like myself. And just, because we don't all really have the money for 3 Ash Blossoms, for 3 Drone Lockbirds, and for things like that. So I just want to explain the reasons why I play the certain number of each cards, and the difference between a Light of Sekka build and a standard Fur Hire build, and the benefits of playing a Light of Sekka build, because Light of Sekka is such a good card for decks that can play it. And I just want to talk about each card's role in this deck. So without further ado, let's get into it. Well, before I go into the deck profile, I just want to briefly mention that the extra deck is catered to monsters I only use in this deck profile. There's going to be no bore load, no like big expensive nightmares. You should be able to build this deck for under $100 with every single card included, if you can get it at its most suggested retail price, or the price that it is going for on TCG Player. So just take my word for it. You should be able to build this deck for under $100 with the rarities I have listed, if not rarities lower than the ones I have right here. But without further ado, it is a 40 card main deck and like a 10 card extra deck, because I really don't think you really need that many cards for the extra deck. Fur Hire is more of like a beatdown deck. It can be controlled if you go first, and with some of the extra deck cards I have in here, I'm just gonna explain why. But without further ado, let's get into it. So starting off with the first 3, it's mandatory that you play 3 Beat Bladesman for Hire, and the reason because of that is he's the card you most of the times want to start off with, if not every single time. I'll explain this one time for all the little Fur Hires and one time for all the big Fur Hires. All the little Fur Hires have 2 effects. First effect being during your main phase, you can special summon 1 Fur Hire monster from your hand. And that's pretty much it. It's second effects of the Fur Hires. They get them when a monster is special summoned. So I'm no longer going to explain that. I'm just going to explain their second effects from now on for all the little Fur Hires. So they all have that effect where they special summon 1 from hand. Beat's effect is when a Fur Hire is special summoned onto the field, while he's on the field, of course, is you get to add 1 Fur Hire monster from your deck to your hand. So for example, if I was to special summon 1 Helmer, which I do play 3 of. So if I special summon Helmer using Beat's effect, I can use Beat's second effect because a Fur Hire monster was special summoned onto the field, allowing me to add any Fur Hire monster from my deck to my hand. So you guys can see how the deck works, in that you special summon 1 and then they just start coming out left and right. You generate advantage mainly using Beat's effect, and mainly using Rafal and other cards like that, managing your resources very well. But for the most part, Beat's the card you always want to start off with. So Helmer's moving on to Helmer, and the reason you play 3 Helmer, even though he's 0 attack, 2000 defense, I really wish he was a level 2 Aqua monster, so maybe we can do some Toad plays, but I understand why. Would have been too busted. But Helmer's second effect is when a Fur Hire special summon, you get to discard a Fur Hire card, discard a Fur Hire monster to draw 1, and the reason that works well is because you play 3 Seal. So Seal's effect is, again, they all have that first effect. The second effect is when a Fur Hire monster is special summon while he's on the field, you get to add 1 Fur Hire monster from your graveyard to your hand. So drawing into these 3 opening hand is absolutely busted, because if your opponent has no way to disrupt you, you normal summon Beat, activate effect, special summon Helmer. Helmer will you most of the time will have other Fur Hires, but Helmer will trigger Beat's effect. Beat will add 1. Then if you have another one, you could you could use Helmer's effect to special summon Seal, discard 1 Fur Hire card, draw 1, and then if you have another Fur Hire, you can special summon that one, and then trigger Seal's effect to pretty much add that Fur Hire card that you discarded off Helmer's effect, to pretty much add them back to hand, and maybe you can special summon them off Seal's effect. That's kind of how this deck works. You have to manage your resources very smartly, very intelligently. But these 3 are my personal favorite cards in the deck, and I wouldn't play them at any other ratios. Next we have Bravo, and the reason we play Bravo is basically he's just a name. He's one of my favorites when it comes to the Trickstar matchup, because he boosts up all their attacks, of course, when a Fur Hire monster special summon when he's already on the field, by 500, making Beat 17, Seal 21, Helmer you'll most likely never attack, because even with that boost he's only 500, and Bravo will make himself 2400, which is pretty strong. But him just being a 19 body level that you can just normal summon and just pretty much kill into stuff is actually really good. Next we play 2 Recon, and 2 Dampa. And the reason for that is I really don't see their utility going first for much. So their effect is when a for hire monster special summon while Dampa's on the field, you can destroy one monster, one face of monster, and pretty much recon destroys back row. They have a really interesting play. They have a really interesting extra deck play that I want to showcase later. But that pretty much like wraps it up for the little for hires. So for the big for hires, you play triple Rafal, and the big for hires effects are completely different from the little for hires effect. So Rafal champion for hire, when he's special summon, you get to first excavate cards up to the different number of for hire cards you have in your hand, like on the field. So for example, if you have 1 beat and 1 Dampa, you get to excavate 2 cards and pretty much add 1. So he's a pretty much pot of duality on steroids, and I really like that effect because you don't necessarily need to add a for hire card to your hand from the ones you excavated. So if you have 4 different for hire monsters on the field, you pretty much get to add 1 for hire, like any card of the 4 you excavated, which is pretty good in my opinion. And the second effect is when a monster effect is activated, you can discard 1 for hire card to pretty much negate its effect. Next, we play 1 Dyna, and Dyna is just pretty much like a big beater, but his first effect, and Dyna's first effect is when he's special summoned onto the field, you get to banish a card from your opponent's graveyard up to the different number of for hire cards on the field, which is really good because it doesn't exclude itself. So if you have 5 for hire cards on the field, you pretty much get to banish 5 cards from your opponent's graveyard, which is really important nowadays because cards like decks like Trickstar, Sky Striker are really relying on having that many spells in the graveyard, Trickstars and things like that. So pretty much Dyna at 1, which is searchable by beat if you most of the time special summon, is really good. Next, you play 1 Wiz, and Wiz, when she's special summon, you pretty much gain 500 life points for each different like for hire monster with a different name. So for example, if you control 2 for hire monsters with different names, including herself, you only gain 1,000 because she does exclude herself. Next, her second effect is you get to discard a for hire card to pretty much negate a spell or trap effect, and that's only really good. But for hire's playstyle is more aggressive, especially with this Light of Sekka build. But I still find myself utilizing her for some certain matchups because she is a very big defensive, it's like a big defensive wall, and just being able to have a spell and trap negator you can search with beat is actually really good. And most of the time you could just special summon her if you draw into her using any of the little for hire, so that's just pretty good. So these are pretty much the only big for hires I run. My personal favorite from all of them is Rafal, him just being a very big beater. Dyna comes up sometime and Wiz comes up sometime, but I wouldn't trade these for any of the other bigger for hires. I hope we do get more support, but these are personally my favorite 5 for hires. Now let's talk a little about the random cards that don't really fit into the for hire archetype, but do synergize very well with it. Now Gallus' Starbeast shouldn't have came to anybody's surprise with like the Thomas Rose Burning Abyss Light of Sekka build. And what Gallus pretty much does is he's a level 3 beast monster that you can reveal, discard the top card from your deck to the graveyard, and then if it's a monster, burn your opponent times 200 for its level, and then special summon this card. Now the reason Gallus is really good in this deck is because Helmer and Beat, they're very weak monsters. Helmer especially is just Helmer's effect is just, in my personal opinion, so good. It makes him really worth running at 3, and Gallus makes Helmer really good for rank plays. So pretty much, I wouldn't run Gallus at anything less than 3 in a Light of Sekka build, especially because you're playing so many monsters. 99.9% of the time, you're going to mill a monster from the top of your deck to special summon this guy, and then having his effect isn't once per turn. So being able to reveal 3, yeah, you'll be able to discard the top 3 cards from your deck to the graveyard to pretty much burn your opponent times whatever. One of my favorite things actually is milling the BLS to burn my opponent for 1600. It happens more than you imagine, especially having so many high level for hire monsters in the graveyard, and then just being able to put things in the graveyard for the for hires effect like Seal, and for Seal or BLS to come out later is just like so good. And since I already spoiled it, to BLS, and the reason BLS is so good in this deck is because we do play hand traps, we just don't play the very expensive ones. We play the ones that synchronize very well with BLS, meaning that you'll have hand traps in the graveyard that you'll be able to use at any moment during the game that will like make it easier to summon BLS. Now many of you be thinking, why not 3? Is because I found myself, this card is a very good card for turn 3, for example. Most of the time with for hires you do want to go first, because having the Rafal, the Wiz, or being able to set up a very good board is very good. And then BLS just coming in turn 3 if your opponent doesn't kill you, just being able to smack things out of the way, just most of the time gives you game. I wouldn't run him at 3 because you don't really want to draw into him. You don't really want to draw into more than one. Next, let's talk a little bit about the hand traps, because this deck does play hand traps. Hand traps are a very important part of the meta, and I'll explain to you why they synergize so well with this deck. For the hand traps, we played 3 Effect Veiler because it's just so good in this meta. It's not once per turn, you can discard it and pretty much negate a monster's effects. But you can only use it during the main phase, which is unfortunate, but it's just such a good card not to run. A lot of cards being Effect Veiler, like being Effect Veiler targets are so good. Again, it's not once per turn, so triple Effect Veiler in my personal opinion. And it being a light, you can later banish for BLS is so good. For the next hand trap, I like to play 3 DD Crow, and the reason is because again, it is not a once per turn hand trap, and you can pretty much, and what DD Crow does is you banish one card from your opponent's graveyard. So for the invocation, they try to use that invocation effect in the graveyard, banish it. Try to use Alistair, banish it. For the Trickstar matchup, it's very good hand trap, especially for more budget decks. And it is very good in like a deck like this, where you kind of want to summon BLS and you have the targets. You can easily like manage well. Again, they're quick. They're like, this one's only during your opponent's main phase, but this one is during either player's turn. So that's actually like really good, banishing a card from your opponent's graveyard. It doesn't negate their effect like Called by the Grave, but it's just such a good hand trap to run. And finally, for the hand traps, I played 3 Skullmeister, and Skullmeister's like Called by the Grave in a way, but it's only when a card effect is activated in the graveyard, so like a Reincarnation or a Phoenix Blade or something like that. And finally, for one of the most important cards in this deck, it isn't really a hand trap, but you can count it as one if you feel like it. It is Saravis, the Ancient and Ascended, and what he basically, his function in this deck, his only job in this deck is to protect you from Effect Veiler and Widow Anchor, or like pretty much any targeting that will stop you from doing your plays. And what he basically does is you can discard this card. It's during either player's turn to negate effect that targets or negate a card that targets. So for example, if they try to Veiler your beat when you start off, if you have this in hand, you can just discard it, say no. It doesn't have to go to the graveyard, but it can be called by the grave. So again, this card's only function in this deck is to pretty much prevent you from being Widow Anchored, from being being Effect Veiler or cards like that. And it just being a light target makes it easier to summon BLS for later turns. So you pretty much, with these cards, you should have the targets that you need, or you should be able to draw into them to special summon your BLS with ease. So that pretty much wraps it up for the monster lineup. We play 37 monsters in this deck and only 3 spells. Finally, for the last 3 cards of the deck, which will wrap up the 40 card main deck, is Light of Sekka. Now I decided to build like the For Hire deck around Light of Sekka because it is such a good card. Any card that just says draw 2 is just such an amazing card. And not just that, it has a second effect where it allows you to reveal a card from your hand. So for example, you can reveal a card you don't really need, shuffle it into the deck, pretty much draw a brand new card. So the first effect is draw 2 cards. Second effect is reveal 1 card. Well, you banish this card for cost, reveal your card, shuffle it into the deck, draw 1. So it pretty much allows you to like dump out any card you may have multiple of, or you don't really want to see in your hand, for a brand new card, which in my personal opinion is such a good card, because already it just being able to draw 2 cards is insanely busted. So just being able to pretty much draw 2 cards and like shuffle 1 is just such a good thing for a deck like this, because you'll be able to get into more For Hires and be able to just do your plays from there. And then drawing multiples of this isn't bad, because if they ash it, well, next turn just use another one. So in my personal opinion, I never really shuffle Light of Sekka off Light of Sekka, but Light of Sekka is just such a good card for this deck, and I really recommend, if you have any deck you could potentially play Light of Sekka in, try it, because it is such a good card, and like testing and everything, I just really love this card. You know, so that pretty much wraps it up for the 40 card main deck. Let's talk a little bit about, so for the extra deck, this is going to be very fast. We play 1 token because we have Ronin in the extra deck, because we can make them off of Dampa and Recon. Let's talk a bit about Ronin. So Ronin is, you can only special, he's a rank 2 that you can only special summon using Beast. You can detach one to special summon a token equal to the monster with the highest attack on the field. So for example, if you have a Rafal and he is the strongest monster on the field, this token you special summon off his effect is now 3,000 attack and defense, and he can't be destroyed as long as there's a beast on the field. So most of the time you summon him in defense, special your token, whatever the highest attack monster is, and pretty much just crash with. So Ronin's really good in this deck, because Recon and Dampa can really make him, and he really comes up a lot, so really enjoy playing him. Next is Underclock Taker, to lower your opponent's like monsters. He's just such a good card. Nightmare, the only nightmares we play are Phoenix and Cerberus, because they are very inexpensive, and you can potentially like link plays in the deck are really good. You don't really have much back row removal outside of Recon, so Nightmare Phoenix being able to pop spells and Cerberus being able to pop monsters in the main monster zone is really good. Next, for the only expensive card in this extra deck, well, maybe 1 or 2, is number 75, Bamboozling Gossip Shadow. I really like this card because it has a very high defense, 2600, and it is a rank 3 that will, like, it's pretty much an omni negate. So when a monster effect is activated, you can detach one card from like one. You can detach one material from this card, and that effect becomes both players draw one card, which is a really good thing. So for example, if your opponent, if there's something you just need, a monster effect you need to negate, it just becomes draw one card, and it's such a really good like effect. It's just a really good rank 3 because having Rafal, having this, is just like 2 negates, and it just puts more negates on the field, and it's really easy to summon this because most of your fur hires like Beat, Helmer, and now having Galaxy Star Beast in your arsenal are just level 3s, making rank 3s easier. Next one, number 30, Acid Golem of Destruction, because he's just a big beater, 3k. The Phantom Knights of Breaksword, pretty much pop one of your weaker for hires, pop one of your opponent's monsters, go in with Breaksword. Next, Grand Pulse, because again you might want to destroy back row, field spells, things like that. Babuska, because rank plays, you can't go into him. Next, we play one Gaga Samurai, because you can detach one, he could attack twice. He's a 1900 attack, rank 4. He's very inexpensive, and he's such an effective card from my personal testing. And finally, the second most expensive card in this extra deck is Dante, Traveler of the Burning Abyss. Now, the reason I play Dante is, again, we do play a lot of level 3s. We don't really have that big attack. And then Dante's effect, being able to mill the top cards from your deck to the graveyard, just makes it easier to summon card like BLS, puts resources in the graveyard that you can use later. For example, using Seal's effect, using Light of Sekka, anything like that from the graveyard. But that pretty much wraps it up for the extra deck. Now let me get into some final. So that pretty much wraps it up for the deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Consider joining the Tier 0 family by subscribing and hitting that subscribe button. So hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile. I really do enjoy playing this deck. It's really fun. Light of Sekka is just such an amazing. So that pretty much wraps it up for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. My name is Esma. Hope to catch you guys in the next one. I'm out.